Sunday night, and we are, of course, watching Hurricane Lee as it gets better organized. The eye is back, pressures are falling, the hurricane is strengthening. We're going to talk about that in such incredible detail because we have our special guest tonight is meteorologist Bill Goodman from the National Weather Service Forecast Office in Upton, New York, and he'll tell us whether WPC and SPC really do watch the show on an almost continuous basis. We'll talk about the week ahead, the long range, and more. And that is right now on the Joe and Joe Weather Show, which is brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York. They've got mulch, topsoil, and sand. Wintertime, they've got salt. And, of course, with the possibility that a hurricane moves up the East Coast sometime this hurricane season, not a bad idea to make sure you got everything you need just in case. 631-756-1125 for the best prices in town, and the website is
OmniTrueValue.com.
And Tempest by WeatherFlow. Get the revolutionary Tempest weather system, and you can join the fastest growing weather network on the planet. The link is pinned to the top of the chat board. It's also on the descriptor to this video. And if you do decide to make a purchase of either this or anything else that's on the Tempest website, we implore you to use the referral link and the coupon code I want a weather station, which we know deep down inside everybody does. And if you do, what will they get, Joe Rayo?
They'll get a punch in the nose. No, they'll get 10% off, Joe.
That's right. They'll get 10% off. And let me get screen up. Two of us are...
I may get a Tempest weather station because my Davis weather station, yes, I'm mentioning the brand name, is doing it to me again. It does this every so often. The tipping spoon gets stuck. And I've had two drenching downpours over the last 2 days, and it has recorded a grand total of 2/100ths of an inch of rain, which is really completely impossible. I may just chuck this thing after all these years and go with Tempest because we've been promoting it, and it seems to be such a great product.
Well, then use the coupon code I want a weather station and use the Tempest referral link so you get 10% off.
Yes.
It's like I want my MTV. I'm dating myself there.
Yeah. Well, Bill, didn't you just close your MySpace account, or do you still have it?
No, I'm still on CompuServe.
That's right. Exact Prodigy. Bill Goodman, ladies and gentlemen, our occasional guest. We always love having Bill on. We were going to try to have Tony Gigi on, but unfortunately, Tony is away at the Gateway Computer Owners Convention in Kenosha, Wisconsin for the next week. So he was not able to do this show, but he promises that after he gets back, the next time around, he will jump on. So it's the three of us here tonight. Well, let me just say welcome to everybody on the chat board. Welcome to those of you who are lurking in the background. As we all know, some people lurk more than others, right, Bill?
I wouldn't know anything about that.
No, you wouldn't. So welcome. We're on. This is the Joe and Joe Weather Show. Joe Rayo is on the bottom tonight. I'm on the upper right. And Bill Goodman's our guest on the upper left. We're on Sunday through Thursdays at 7:35 p.m. Occasionally, we do a show on a Friday or a Saturday, like we did yesterday at noon. And if you like the show, hit the like button, because we like to go over 100, and we've got a lot to talk about. The first thing I want to just mention to you guys is, there's three meteorologists on this show, and I wonder if we're going to come to a conclusion out of all of this, because you could jump, Bill, from run to run, and we've been going in all sorts of different directions. Each run apparently has had its hand to at least at one point or another bring Lee very close to the coast, particularly for New England. I'm still not quite sure yet how this is all going to play out this week. And I'm guessing that most of the weather folks out there, including the Hurricane Center, is kind of scratching their heads with this.
Yeah, I would imagine so. I mean, you got so many moving parts involved here that it's a very complicated forecast to try to get down to the nitty gritty. How many 6 days out or to a week out? It's this one's been a challenge.
Well, it all depends upon what is going to be the dominant weather feature. Is it going to be the big subtropical ridge of high pressure over the central part of the Atlantic Ocean, or is it going to be this trough that we've been talking about for a number of days that'll be swinging across like the proverbial pendulum, the northeastern United States, and will it pick up that tropical cyclone? Put your bets down. What do you want to go with, the ridge or the trough? And it seems, guys, that from run to run, the models seem to be changing their minds. As one run, a particular model might say, "Well, I'm going with the high pressure system," and then 6 hours later, "Well, wait a minute now, maybe it might actually be the trough." And as a result of this, we're seeing this system, Lee, coming northward and either wavering to the west or wavering back to the east. And you guys are right. I mean, it depends, run to run, inconsistencies. And we're just going to have to wait and see as we get a bit closer. And you know when it's finally going to happen? As I say, during the winter season, let's wait until we're within like 72 to 84 hours, in which case the NAM will probably have the best clue of all as to where this thing is going to go. But until then, you just got to sit back and watch as we go from run to run, and one waver to the left and waver to the right and up and down. It's going to be crazy. But the one thing I will say, though, is that so far, regardless of how far west it has been pushed, in the most extreme case, it hasn't pushed all the way as far west as New York City. Yeah, Cape Cod, Boston, eastern New England. That's about as far to the east west as I've seen it so far. And you watch, if we get a run over the next couple of days, 2-3 days, where one of the GFS or the European or the Icon or whatever pushes it all the way toward Long Island, you're going to see like everybody going, "Ah!"
We told you. We'll get a lot of that.
Bill, what do you make of the fact that the European, to me, has just been horribly inconsistent?
We're talking about things that are like really sensitive to the slightest changes in the observations and in I guess the trends with so many different things going on. You're talking about not just one but two troughs. You're talking about the subtropical high in the Atlantic. You have tropical storm, soon to be Hurricane Margot, that may play into this. And then I guess as one trough exits, you have heights building, the Canadian Maritimes. There's so many different things. And I haven't even talked about where the storm is exactly where it's going to make that northward turn that we've been waiting for. So,
well, what do you make of the fact that, I mean, I really didn't give it a close look yet today, but yesterday, and I don't know that I've ever seen this, but the GFS and the European, oftentimes there may be differences in speed. And oftentimes the GFS might be 12 hours faster, or the European might be 12 hours faster. Sometimes it's 24 hours faster. I think yesterday was the first time that I saw a 48-hour difference in terms of the GFS and the European. With the GFS bringing something up on Friday and taking it out, and that was that one run yesterday afternoon where everybody just flipped. I mean, you could hear them flipping out on the X platform, on Facebook, and all the rest of it. When that European run model came out, I mean, that was 48 hours, 2 days, 2 full days later than the GFS. And judging by the pattern that the European was shaping up for that 2-day delay, it sort of makes sense that, yeah, it probably would come up the East Coast and pull way to the left and go to, certainly go to Block Island or Cape Cod or wherever it had it. I'm leaning to the idea that this ultimately is going to pass south and east of Cape Cod, which is probably a good reason to place your bets in the other direction. But I'm thinking, eastern New England, Nova Scotia seem to have, well, particularly as you get further into Maine, and then definitely when you get over into Nova Scotia. I mean, those folks looks like they're going to get something. The big question mark is how far west does the rain get? Does that heavy rain band get to eastern Long Island? Does it get to eastern Connecticut? Does wind on the west side? Because this thing is going to become post-tropical when it gets up here. You know that that's going to be post-tropical, right?
Yeah. Well, once it gets 40 north, the hurricane center will be like, we're done. Well, maybe not in this case though. It depends on the forward motion is probably going to be picking up a bit more than what what the model consensus has. That often happens. Could be sometimes 6 to 12 hours faster.
All right, I'm going to bring up Lee's satellite. I have a lovely.
Hey, Bill, in a case like this, does the do the forecasters, does the the meteorologist in charge at your weather office, your National Weather Service office, put out like an inter-office memo and say, we're going to have a meeting either via Zoom for people who are at home or here at the office or whatever. We're going to have a meeting and we're going to discuss exactly what we're going to tell the public. I'm not saying right now, and I'm not even saying next Tuesday or Wednesday, but if it really looks like this thing is getting quite close by the end of this week, do you guys all get your heads together and have like what we're doing here on Joe and Joe, just bouncing ideas off everybody's head and finally coming up with, okay, here's the statement that we're going to issue to the general public? Does that ever happen in cases of impending major? Well, let me change the whole subject here. In case of doom.
Well, I mean, I think back on Sandy, that did happen during Sandy because there was the big conundrum: when this thing makes landfall, what are we going to call it? So there was that message to be, to be discussed, and you don't want to dilute the message of this thing is going to be dangerous. I think in a case like this, well, I mean, we have daily briefings that include the entire staff all the time, and if you're not in the office, you dial in and everyone knows or should know what's going on at the very least. I think these things happen more on the level of the hurricane center, where before an advisory comes out, the affected offices get on, and there's some talk back and forth about sometimes there's discussion about where watches and warnings should go. There's actually some politics that play into that. If my county has a watch or a warning, if your county has a watch or a warning, I want one too. There's those types of things that go on. It's I mean, there's no real rancorous debate, but I think we do kind of get our ducks in order before official hurricane center products go out.
And I forgot about that too. I mean, obviously, there are coordination messages that go on between each weather office. So I would assume when something like this happens, you would probably coordinate with Philly and Boston and maybe even with Albany, right? Those are the three three other offices, forecast offices that you would have to get in line with in a situation like an impending situation like this, correct?
Yeah, Binghamton goes on that list too, since we do share it's a small border, just Western Orange, but we do collaborate with them too. I mean, there's a lot because we all want to make sure that we're painting the same picture as a storm comes up the coast, that we don't have any glaring inconsistencies between our forecast areas. That's sometimes that takes a lot of time, and what are we using for our wind gust factor? We all start off with the same. When a hurricane comes up the coast, we all start off with the same sustained wind forecast. So we haggle a little bit about the gusts. We haggle with amongst each other and with WPC about rainfall. WPC usually drives the bus with rainfall, but they do talk to the individual WFOs. They want our expertise and and
of course it's always after they've watched the Joe and Joe weather show Sunday through Thursday at 7:35 p.m. I've put up the loop, and then I just switched over to the advisory. So why don't we let me get this out there, then we'll come back to the loop because we're going to talk about Lee because it's obviously become better organized today. 22.1 north, 61.7 west. This was in the 5 o'clock advisory. We're on 6-hour advisories, folks, because there are no tropical storm watches up. So when they put watches up, then we go to 3 hours, but there aren't going to be any watches for a while yet. So the next few days, it's 6-hour advisories, 22.1, 61.7, and that's well to the northeast of Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. Top winds now 120 miles an hour with a west-northwest wind at 8. and it's back to being a Category 3 hurricane. And on the satellite loop, I've got the floater loop. Two things that strike me. Well, here's the wide loop, so you could see both Lee, and on the far to the right of Lee, you see Tropical Storm Margot, and way out to the left, you could see what's left of Tropical Storm Hova. But Lee, in between, on the last couple of frames of the loop, you'll see that the eye comes back rather quickly. Wish the loop would move a little faster, but unfortunately, I guess this is one of those full disk loops, takes a long time for it to move. But you can start to see the eye there, and I'll switch it over to the floater where you'll be able to see the eye a bit better. One thing's for sure, Bill, from looking at the floater image, is that the shear that showed up on Friday and lasted through a good chunk of yesterday, that seems to have relaxed. I think that caught everybody by by surprise.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't paying attention to it. I wonder if we all just kind of got dazzled by the intensity forecast and forgot to look at that. I really don't know for sure. But yeah, I mean, it was southwesterly shear, and I'm looking at the IR image, and yeah, there's no southwesterly shear over that hurricane anymore. If that's that southwestern semicircle looks pretty good. If there's southwesterly shear anywhere, it's probably on Margot.
Yeah, and I some of those hurricane models, like the HWRF, the HWRF, and then there's a couple of others, the HMON. I forgot which one it was I looked at this afternoon. That took it down. Takes the pressure down to the 915 or 914. Either the European yesterday took it down to 912, I think, for Tuesday. But I would think that while it's in this period now where there is no shear, well, we might see a little bit of a surprise to the upside. It's not moving very much. It's not moving very fast at all, and that's going to be really important as the longer it takes to move westward, the greater the probability that it's going to, not, I don't want to say miss that trough, but the trough might not have the same kind of influence on it as it otherwise would. In other words, it wouldn't kick it out as quickly to the northeast as we would like.
Yeah, the longer it takes to interact, sure, that makes sense.
Joseph?
Yes, sir.
Would you like to jump in here?
Oh, well, I mean, if I
that's my nice way of saying to take over, because I got to switch maps. Oh, I got to set up maps.
Oh, okay. Well, just looking at what I see on my screen here, that the folks in Puerto Rico are probably mopping their brow right now because they can see just how closely Lee is passing relative to them. The only thing that they are going to be experiencing over the next several days will be very rough surf generated by that storm. We also should point out that this coming Thursday, we are going to have a new moon. And obviously, whenever we have astronomically higher than normal tides, the water levels are a bit higher than normal. And the last thing you would want is something to aggravate or to cause the levels to go even higher. But that's what we have for later this week. And that, combined with the track relative to the Atlantic seaboard, means that most everywhere along the East Coast, ocean shore areas, are going to be seeing rather rough seas generated again by Lee as it slowly, underscore that, slowly pushes northward over the course of the next 4 or 5 days.
Two outliers, by the way. I got the Hurricane Lee track model guidance from 18Z, Bill and Joe. And suddenly there are two outliers that turn it north-northwest and keep it moving north-northwest beyond 120 hours. Okay? And actually, the ones that are going north-northeast are not that far to the east of Cape Cod. So, just to bear that in mind. This is a super tight view of them. But what was remarkable to me, though, up until through today anyway, was the fact that the hurricane, oftentimes when you look at these, the hurricane model track guides and the spaghetti plots, and you go out past, say, day 5 or so, they all start, going all over creation with regards to their forecasts. But this one has been remarkably tight. Through 168 hours, there were for a couple of days there was barely a spread of 200 miles from the furthest east to the furthest west. You know, I know that happens sometimes, but this one kind of caught my eye.
That's I mean, except for those couple of outliers, that's a pretty tight clustering all the way a week out. That's pretty good. And then you don't often see that, especially with a northward moving storm with so many players involved.
What is that? The high fee and the high fi.
Right. Yeah, exactly. All right, let's go. All right, so the story of the afternoon. Yesterday, the story was the 12Z European, okay, which of course it was taken away at 0Z, and it remains away on the 12Z.
And you were kind enough. I'm sitting behind the help desk at the German Fest in Putnam Valley, answering questions, and I see your message pop up. And as soon as I saw that message, I had to put my eyes back in my sockets.
Well, Joe, I was counting on the fact that you didn't take your rotary mobile telephone, and that you took your smartphone, so that you would see it. Well, I'm glad at least that you got the message. So this is the 18Z run. I don't know if you could see it on the screen yet, Bill. There seems to be a little bit of a delay, but it should be coming up now. This first trough out to 54 hours, which is Tuesday night. There's an upper low south of James Bay, northern Lake Huron. You know, the base of the trough is Missouri, Tennessee, Western Virginia. You know, that's kind of where the heights sort of bottom out and then turn up to the northeast. And you know, Lee seemed to be getting swallowed by that. But then the trough axis on Thursday is literally down the Hudson Valley to New York City. And that first trough all of a sudden just pulls out pretty rapidly. Leah's moving north, and it actually starts to move northeastward, and you think, okay, but then the northern plains, there's a cutoff low at Lake Winnipeg that dives down, and suddenly Leah's pulled north and then turns northwestward toward Nantucket. And now all of a sudden you've got a cutoff low in northern Minnesota, a trough that goes down to Mississippi, and then Lee getting, just sort of pivoted around in a negatively tilted fashion and getting drawn out to the northwest. Now, obviously, this all has to do with the timing issues, with the how the models are handling the timing issues with regards to the storm. The GFS has been the fastest of all the models for days. Now, all of a sudden, it's slowing down. Are we at a point now where we could look at this and say, yeah, this might be a possibility, or do we still have to? I imagine the answer to the question is, yeah, we still kind of have to wait to see how all these players come together.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at that GFS run with the 500 height. It looks like the trough that's getting into the northern plains. I don't even know how much of a player it is, because you still have a shortwave ridge in between it and the hurricane, and I see heights building over the northern Atlantic east of Newfoundland, and also looks like heights also building across Quebec. I wonder if that's what's really causing the turn, more so than you have the trough exiting. You have heights building all to the north and east of the storm. It's where is it going to go for a while?
By the way, while you were talking, I was being very evil. I was running the GFS after Lee's gone. And if you look on the lower right, at about 216 hours, the models have been advertising something else coming out of the tropical Atlantic, and it looks like there's another hurricane here around day 8 or 9, and
that's the intermediate. Did the 12Z run do that too? Or?
The 12Z run has it where it took it to coastal North Carolina, and then it suddenly made a sharp right turn and went straight east. Last night's one of the overnight runs, I think it might have been the 0Z run, took it right up the coast. So there's probably going to be another system out there one of the waves coming off the African coast is probably going to represents that next thing. But Let's not even go down that road, because we're still talking about Lee. All right, so that's what the GFS did today, and then of course we've got and I'll show the surfaces in a minute. I want to do the 500s here first, do the upper air. And while the map's getting set, Leon Probitsky bangs the tip jar. And thank you, Leon, for hitting Super Chat. And I think we had an earlier hit, but I can't see who it was. But whoever it was, thank you for hitting the tip jar. So the European, for what it's worth, there's your first trough. And now, of course, Bill, it doesn't even have the second trough digging into the plains like it did yesterday. So that just sort of lifts up. Lee just comes up. It actually, the European does kind of hook it north, goes northeastward. Then it hooks northward or slightly west of due north, and it's just, east-southeast of Cape Cod and south-southwest of Halifax. And then it goes northeastward right into Halifax. So it handles, it was the one yesterday that was making the deep trough diving down into the plains. Now today it says, no. It's not going to do that. It's going to, more go over the top and drop down into the eastern lakes. So, there's another. I've seen this model for the last 5 days. Just every run is a totally different look at 500, and it doesn't stop. It hasn't stopped yet.
Yeah, that's. It sort of has the same idea as the GFS. Its upper trough is an entirely different place. I guess when the hurricane's getting close to New England and the Canadian Maritimes, looked like it has almost near James Bay at one point. But it still has that same idea when that first trough exits, that you have rising heights over eastern Canada and all the way out to the Atlantic north of wherever Margot's going to be, and it's probably going to it might just, I don't know if it's going to make a turn in the northwest or maybe just slow down. It's hard. It's hard to say, but that it sort of makes you wonder how much credence there is to some of these these cycles that want to really wrap it in toward New England. I even think of what was the one Henri that we had a couple of years ago. Even had the same thing. It came up toward us, and the heights were all building to the north, and that was the first inkling that we were going to get hit with it. Out eastern Long Island and southern New England. So. We might see. I don't know if we're establishing a trend here, or that it is going to back in, and how much. I don't know. We're just going to have to be watched. So many things going into this.
And by the way, the system you just showed a couple of minutes ago, the next one after this one, potentially like 280 some odd hours or whatever. If that's the end storm, the name of that storm would be Nigel.
Nigel. All right. Well, that's easy. That's easy to pronounce. There aren't.
You don't meet too many Nigels. The only Nigel I know, who I didn't know personally, was Nigel Bruce, who played Dr. Watson on some of the old-time radio.
Oh, right. Yes, of course. And he was with Basil Rathbone in the Sherlock Holmes movies. Yes. Oh, no question. Good. I was a very good character actor. Very much liked him. And we're all old enough to know who Nigel Bruce is.
Well, some of us are.
Yes. Even Bill's old enough to know who Nigel Bruce is.
Well, right? I didn't know who Nigel Bruce was, so that's just I just had my head in a different place. That's all. Not.
Well, here's the GFS at 18Z with the left hook, right there. Friday night, backing westward. It actually has rain. Measurable rain to western Long Island and into western Connecticut for a 1-6-hour period. And it looks like the low center goes over, Nantucket, Cape Cod, and then kind of hugs the coast, Portland, Maine, eastward to Bangor, and then, goes actually north of Nova Scotia. The low center does, and fills pretty rapidly, which is interesting. That's that. Okay. And let's look at the icon, because the icon today, it's there. We might as well look at it, right? So that's the 18Z icon only goes out 120 hours. So it doesn't go out far enough. And just waiting for these maps to load here. So let's see. So it goes, it doesn't go out far enough. So that only takes us to 18Z Friday. But the 12Z, run, which has another 60 hours to it. This one also did the left hook, like the GFS, and you see it here. So this would be for late Friday night, in Saturday afternoon. Actually, I mean, fairly similar to the GFS here. Not, I wouldn't say identical, but they're very close.
Yeah, that's got some really, really strong ridging over eastern Canada that links all the way out into the Atlantic, and it doesn't even seem to have Margot in the pic. Actually, where does it have? It has Margot undercutting the upper high in the Atlantic by quite a bit.
All right, so I'll bring up the North Atlantic view so that we could take a look at what you're saying here. And
yeah, I'm cheating. I'm looking on Weather Bell.
All right, well, you know what? You're entitled. You paid the subscription fee. You might as well. So here we go. So just to take it from the perspective of the North Atlantic view, as you said, there's you see Lee, you see Margot, which is going in the other direction toward the Azores, and then straight south underneath it, there's a closed 1007 low there, so that's probably what would be Nigel, and yeah, there's a big high that builds over Labrador and northeastern Quebec to Labrador, and then over to Newfoundland. And yeah, that building of that high is really crucial here. If it's going to make a left hook, you got to have rising heights up in eastern Canada. And certainly the icon is showing that. If I bring up the upper air with this, we could probably see it a bit better. Yeah, there's a big, there's a trough that's the deep trough. Lake Winnipeg down into Minnesota, so the heights are rising like crazy up in Labrador. So you got a nice ridge there, and the Lee is just sort of trapped underneath that.
And in a way, that's what happened somewhat in 2012 with Sandy. We had a huge high pressure cell that built over eastern Canada, and Sandy came up and the two interacted with each other, and the high was like saying, no, you're not going to go any further north than where you are right now. So you got to go somewhere else. And Sandy said, oh, well, I guess I'll go to the left. And you talk about a left hook. That was the left hook to end all left hooks right into central New Jersey. And that, of course, caused all the mayhem in the aftermath of the landfall, not just for Jersey, but also for us here in the tri-state metropolitan area. So now what we're looking at is the beginnings of what some of the models are trying to infer will be another building ridge, not quite as far south as we saw in 2012 with Sandy, but this could mean some problems for Cape Cod, for Boston, or down East Maine. Again, as life itself to be continued, so to speak, on a day-to-day basis in the coming days ahead.
Yeah, there's also a wrapped up animal southeast off the southeast coast of Greenland, between Greenland and Iceland, and that's helping to bring up some of the heights up out to its west toward Labrador. I drew in where we're talking about here with respect to the trough that's from Minnesota down to Louisiana, and then the ridge which runs from Newfoundland northwestward up into southeastern Canada. So yeah, I mean, Bill, I think you're spot on that. That ridge, that building of that ridge is so important to the outcome in how this is going to play, and we're not going to be able to give that answer today, obviously.
Yeah, maybe what we've been kind of laughing as the outlier, that might be leading the way. If we got to watch what happens up there in eastern Canada all the way out in the North Atlantic, and watch what Margot's doing. If it were to go as far enough east as the icon has it doing, and really not mess with the ridge out over the Atlantic, that changes things quite a bit.
Well, the GFS, I didn't really notice what the icon was doing with Margot. The GFS, I'll let the map load here. There we go. So Margot, come on. I got a lot of windows open, guys. I'm running a lot of satellites here, so that is slowing me down. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to close out both those satellites and see if that helps the cause. It might not, but we'll see. Yeah, Margot is sort of, west of the Azores by a fair distance, and then it turns westward. As Lee is moving northwestward, Margot's moving almost in lockstep. If you watch this, yeah, look at that. They're moving almost in lockstep when Lee takes the hook on the GFS to the northwest toward Cape Cod. You've got Margot doing the same thing, and then it turns northward and northeastward as it goes up into Maine, and Margot turns northeastward. And then Lee turns east, and Margot turns east. Very, interesting setup here. Very interesting setup.
Well, it's September. These things get weird in the Atlantic in September with ridges, that's for sure.
And today is actually the traditional peak of the hurricane season, September the 10th. So from here on, it slowly at first, and then more significantly, let's say by early to mid-October, the frequency of hurricane activity will begin to drop. But this is the time, and we have Lee, we have Margot, and we may very well in the next few days see the formation of Nigels. So this year, at least, the peak of the hurricane season is living up to its name by providing us with more than a few tropical cyclones in the Atlantic Basin.
All right, so I'm just going to really quick go over what's going on now, because we do have, rain. It has not been the nicest of days in much of the Northeast and Northern Mid-Atlantic states today. And, looking at the radar right now as of 8:08 Eastern time. So if you're watching this on a replay later on or tomorrow morning, just note that this is Sunday night, September 10th at 8, just coming up on 8:10 Eastern time, where we've got some flash flood warnings that are up for parts of central Jersey and southeast PA. Looks like some heavy rain is moving northward. A couple of thunderstorms in the mix there too. In northwest Jersey, there was a patch of some heavier rain that came through earlier today. That's now up in New Hampshire and Maine and has weakened. We've got a few scattered storms down in Virginia, both some in the east and some in the west, and also in the mountains of North Carolina. I heard a rumble of thunder here earlier today, got a few drops of rain after being down to 58 this morning, which was nice, and also in eastern North Carolina. Meanwhile, quite a bit of shower activity from Iowa south and west into Missouri, and also covering much of the Rockies in the southwest. The Storm Prediction Center doesn't have a whole lot of risk in its game plan, and certainly not tonight in the eastern part of the United States. It's just been general activity. Slight risk northwest Texas, southwestern Kansas, and southeastern Colorado. Tomorrow, SPC is doing, there you go, general thunderstorms, except for a small area of marginal risk in West Texas and nosing up into New Mexico. And then on day 3, which is Tuesday into Wednesday, they've got no severe weather, but just general thunderstorms. And it looks like we're probably going to see some storms scattered around tomorrow. Front comes through late Tuesday, takes part of Wednesday to get through, and then of course down the road, it's all going to be trying to figure out what's going to happen with Hurricane Lee. So, Bill, give me your best guess at this point in terms of where you think it's going to go and the timing, because that's and we're all back up full screen now because Bill and I are under the palm trees while poor Joe was stuck inside. But give me your idea of timing. When do you think this is going to be moving up the East Coast? What do you think is the I don't want to say the most likely track, but which track do you think has the makes the most sense from what you've looked at here? Which track would you think makes the most sense?
Yeah, I'll tell you, coming into this call, I thought I had some pretty set ideas, but just really seeing the idea of what's happening with ridging to the north and east, I may have to reserve the right to revise that. I mean, I do like what the European is doing, and sort of bringing it up, and maybe I guess we're talking about I'm figuring it's going to get up here a little bit quicker than what models advertise, because that almost always happens anyway. These things, once they start to undergo post-tropical transition, they just pick up speed. I'm trying to remember back if with Henri, if it had done that when the ridging was building to the north. I know that came to a crawl right after it made landfall and just then hung around for a day. So this might be an instance where it doesn't really speed up all that much. A slower motion, of course, is going to be better news for any land areas that get affected. The wind field may expand, but the strongest winds may not be on the order of what something really charging up the coast fast, like 38 or Donna, any of those classic storms that it'll lose some of its punch as especially gets north of the Gulf Stream. So that's good news. I'm kind of thinking maybe the 12Z European, it does have that little bit of a like it wants to jog just briefly northwest. Maybe that's not enough. Maybe something in between the European and the GFS where where this gets close enough to Cape Cod and Nantucket where they get walloped a little bit. With some strong winds on the western flank of the storm, and that's probably going to be, let's see, 12Z Sunday. I'm looking at the European has it east of Cape Cod, 12Z Sunday. So maybe that could happen. Maybe we're talking about 6 hours faster. So probably Saturday night into Sunday, and then even Sunday night going up into the Canadian Maritimes. But I'm just not sure now what's in store with when heights start to rise to the north. I'm wondering if that's really going to have a huge impact on the later forecast. So we're just gonna have to watch this and watch the trends. That's the best I could say right now, and I'm not as confident as I would have been at the start of this call.
Okay.
And the National Hurricane Center, in their discussion, the last one this afternoon at 5 o'clock, indicated that their updated track forecast is very similar to previous tracks, but it has trended a little faster later in the periods. And as they have always done, those people who are looking maybe for the first time or the uninitiated at these storm tracks from the Hurricane Center, they keep pointing out, don't focus on the exact track, especially at the longer range, which of course they say that, but nobody bothers to give that a mind. They always just concentrate on the exact forecast track, especially the average day in 4 or 5 errors, which for this particular case are about 145 to 200 miles, respectively. And that's a pretty large margin of error. So
now, I just put up, Joe and Bill, I put up WPC's 7-day rainfall forecast map. Okay. And I'm noticing now, it could be just total coincidence that I mentioned Eastern Maine and Nova Scotia as, or Eastern New England. And just by coincidence, they now have on their map, the back edge of 3-inch rainfalls touching Cape Cod, all of, much of Maine, northeastward into New Brunswick, and on up over into Nova Scotia. So, they may, somebody's over there with their mobile device and they're kind of looking here and they're saying, the boys are on, they're talking Nova Scotia, guys. They're talking Eastern Maine.
Well, I've been saying for the last 4 or 5 days that I think we're going to be safe by the closest.
And we have, by the way, we have the tape to prove it. He has been saying it.
And I said the places that I would be, or the swath or region that I think needs to really be very careful with this would be from Cape Cod to down East Maine to Nova Scotia. And I've been also saying Nova Scotia suddenly has become the tropical cyclone magnet over the last few years. Last year, of course, they were hit hard by Fiona. And now this year, about the same time of year, by the way, they're going to be threatened by Lee. And folks over at the and I've been there. I visited the Canadian Hurricane Center in Halifax, and it's a very lovely weather office. but I'm sure that they're probably tearing their hair out right now saying, well, what are we going to do? When is it going to hit? Where will it hit? What do we say? It's going to be another nightmare for them, as was the case last year with Fiona.
Yeah, I think so. It is weird that it's that all of a sudden that is it's like the New Jersey became the new tornado alley of the East.
Yes, exactly.
New hurricane alley of the East Coast. No more Wilmington, North Carolina. Well, Bermuda always gets hit no matter what happens. It seems like they get brushed by everything.
Well, they're the ones that the hurricanes want to go there because A, it's a beautiful island, and B, they're the only place on Earth that could get hit by a Category 4 hurricane, and 10 days later, it's everything is fixed. You never knew that there was a tropical storm or a hurricane that went through there. It's amazing how quickly they recover from these storms.
Is that it?
I don't know. Everybody just kind of. I guess I stunned everybody to silence. I don't know.
Pause. I was trying to find something witty to say about Bermuda.
The thing I'll tell you about Bermuda because I've been there several times.
Same here.
Okay,
yeah.
Bermuda is one of the few places that you have to pay in order to leave it. Okay, because you have to pay their tourist tax that they have. You pay coming in, and you have to pay to leave it. And there's that point where you ask yourself, do I really want to pay this? Don't I want to stay here? Because it is, I mean, it's just gorgeous. It's a beautiful island. I can't say enough good things about it. And I was arrested in Bermuda, which is, even more, when I was 15 years old, which was even more, which was fun. I got taken to a Bermuda jail. It was great. Aren't you going to ask me what I did?
My picture. I'm almost there. My picture of a Bermuda jail is probably something posh, actually. But
no, it wasn't. It wasn't really. But aren't you going to ask me what I got arrested for?
Okay, what did you get arrested for? We thought maybe you were going to volunteer.
I committed this huge crime in Bermuda. I'm not making this up. I was driving a moped without a shirt.
Oh.
I got picked up by the constable, taken to the jail, given an absolutely stern lecture on how this is Bermuda and we don't want the Coney Island crowd here. I swear, I'm not serious. And they did let me go. I didn't even get a ticket. They let me go, but it was an interesting experience. I'm probably one of the few people on earth that, now, of course, if I get caught outside without a shirt on, I'll tell you they should arrest me. Okay. I want to throw two questions at you before we wrap it up tonight because I'm kind of curious about what you think about this. And Joe and I have talked about this particular subject matter. It seems to both of us that over the last year or so, there have been a lot of things happening that kind of go against what you would expect. In other words, for example, we have an El Nino, okay? And the Atlantic is not only the Atlantic out on fire, but it's outperforming the Eastern Pacific, which is the area that should be on fire, okay? So you have that. Last winter, you had, we were deep into that La Nina pattern, yet when you look at how the weather behaved, especially in the western part of the United States, it was more like an El Nino rather than a La Nina. So I'm just wondering, and one of the things that I was thinking about was that undersea volcano that erupted and sent all that water vapor up into the stratosphere. I mean, is that having some kind of impact with sort of screwing around with weather systems? I don't know if you've thought about this. So I figured since I have you here, I can pretty much. I've got you captured, so you might as well try to answer the question.
Well, I mean, there may be something to that. I think I thought I had seen something that really this episode of warming that we've had seemed to correlate pretty well with when after all that release of water vapor into the atmosphere. So there probably is something to that. How long it's going to last, I don't know. That's probably the more interesting question.
Well, and then you got to ask yourself, if we're getting all this weird stuff happening now that's sort of out out of character for what you think you're supposed to get. What's going to happen this wintertime? I mean, what kind of odd things are we going to see in the wintertime when we get there?
Been starting to think about that. I mean, if we have this warm signal that's superimposed on an El Nino where we might normally get a snowy winter, I don't know what to make of it. Yeah, that's got to really got to think about that.
Okay. All right. Well, I wanted your opinion on that. Bill, you're right up there when it comes to people I respect. It's a short list, but you're right up there. So I know we love having you here. We do.
Thanks, I appreciate that. It's a lot of fun coming on. I haven't been here in a while. It had to work my nerve up to it and lurk for a little bit.
Yeah, you were. It was a little. I have to say, it was just a shade on the creepy side to see you on the chat board. Just a little bit creepy. Maybe there's somebody from SPC or WPC using a pseudonym that's on the board. I'm going to have to read these names carefully.
Worry when someone from the Hurricane Center gets on here and starts listening to what we're talking about.
Oh God. I'm sorry we couldn't get Tony. He had a vacation planned. He's not really at a Gateway Computer convention in Kenosha, Wisconsin. But he felt, he wanted to come on, but he was leaving for a week for a vacay, so.
He probably has real palm trees behind him right now.
No. I'm not going to tell you where he went on camera. I'll tell you off. But
okay.
No, but it's not a palm tree place.
All right, so no Bermuda arrest for him.
No. 158 likes tonight. Thank you, those of you who hit the like button. And we've had a nice size audience. Folks from probably up and down the eastern seaboard are trying to pay attention here. I noticed there was somebody on the chat board from said their son lived. Oh, here is Hugh Curran. Says, I live part-time in Nova Scotia. My son lives there year-round. They've spent a year recovering from Fiona, which, by the way, was retired, and are still talking about the aftermath. Yeah, that was Fiona's got the record for the most intense hurricane to go into Atlantic Canada, right?
Yeah, I think so, by far.
Yeah, because what was it? Was it in the 950 millibars, something along those lines?
I think so, and yeah, that one was always fascinating to me. To me, that was the 38 hurricane shifted about 500 miles east, and I watched that very intently as it came north. Try to pay close attention to that, especially like where it was when it was crossing 40 north. Now, granted, that's the Gulf Stream's a little bit farther north there, but you take a Fiona storm and slam that into Long Island. That's going to happen someday.
Well, hopefully. Well, Bill, we're booked to the end of this century, so.
I remember talking with a former colleague of yours, Jeff Tung, Bill, and this was a few years after Sandy, and one of the things that Jeff said was, we know we're going to have a Sandy again. It's just a matter of, when. Is it going to be next year, 10 years from now, 50 or even 100 years from now? But these things are not one-shot deals. There's a recurrence, and, it may very well be, as you said, one of these days we may get a recurrence of the 38 storm that would actually created Shinnecock Inlet because it was so potent on the forward speed and just slammed into east central Long Island. And yeah, it will happen again. We don't know when, but if it does happen, I just don't want to be around when it does. If it does happen.
Yep. Bill, thanks for being on tonight, and thanks everybody for being here. Joe, do you have the super chat hitters?
Yes, indeed. We want to thank. And I hope I didn't leave anybody out, but I believe we got all of them here. Ken Musillo, Leon Probitsky, Sandy Blue Ocean, Ari Mack, and David Fuller. Thank you so much for hitting Super Chat. That means that, I don't know about Joe, but tomorrow I'll be able to go to Arby's.
Yeah, well, I have a pizza.
They have the meat. You know that, right?
Yes, I have preheated my oven to 500 degrees. I got a pizza I made from scratch, including the pizza dough. Okay. I made the pizza dough yesterday, and it didn't rise, so I had to rescue it today, which I did. Redid it, got the yeast in, and it came out pretty good. So Bill, thanks for being here. You have an open invitation. You can send me a message anytime, and you could come on. We'd love having you.
Oh,
And
thanks. My pleasure. I don't think I'm going to be able to make it again this week. I'm on evenings right up through when this storm is going
all
to
right.
be getting our latitude. So I knew I had to, if I was going to jump in, it had to be tonight.
Well, we thank you for taking the time. Really, we appreciate it very much. So everybody
Hey, Bill,
tomorrow.
if you're on evenings this week, why don't you just tune in from work on your computer and then call over some of your colleagues and we could talk to them as well as
Works for
talk.
me.
And if it works, great. I'll have to see if I can pull that off. Depends what I'm doing. I don't know. Some nights I'm doing the long term. I think tomorrow. I think later in the week doing aviation. It's whatever my duties are. It's gotta sync up with those for me to be able to pull it off.
Give our love to SPC and WPC, would you?
Oh, by
And,
all means. We on a daily basis.
okay. Well, we'll see everybody tomorrow at 7:35 Eastern Time for another round of stomach-turning model runs that we will be looking at for the overnight and for tomorrow. So everybody, will see you tomorrow, and nighty night.
As the heights rise.
Yes, exactly. As the heights rise.